First, identical twins. An Upper Paleolithic burial site in modern-day Austria contains the oldest known remains of identical human twins. Dating back roughly 31,000 years, the Stone Age grave was discovered in 2005 at the Kremswartberg archaeological site, which sits along the banks of the Danube River. It contains the skeletons of an infant who died shortly after childbirth and their sibling, who survived for around 7 weeks before passing away. Over the years, this site has revealed over 2,300 stone artifacts and many mammoth remains, including heads and teeth. However, the recent discovery of twins found underneath a mammoth shoulder blade has made major headlines. Their remains were covered with red ochre pigment, and the double burial contained 53 mammoth ivory beads, which were once probably a necklace, as well as a fox tooth and 3 mollusks, which were probably necklace pendants. The mammoth shoulder blade was placed on top of them, probably as part of a ritual. DNA analysis confirmed that the 2 siblings buried together are identical twins. These twins predate the twin girls found in Spain, dating back to the 4th century BC, and provide answers to some important developmental and evolutionary questions. DNA also proved that an infant buried nearby was most likely the twins' cousin, who died at just 3 months old. The child was buried in an adjacent plot just 5 feet away and was covered in red ochre and accompanied by grave goods, including a 3-inch-long mammoth ivory pin. It is the first time researchers have used ancient DNA to confirm twins in the archaeological record. The archaeologists working on this said that finding multiple burials from the Paleolithic period is already rare, but the fact that there was enough high-quality DNA still available to analyze was like winning the lottery. The Cannibal Skull Cup. People living in a cave in Somerset, England, 14,700 years ago were eating each other, but strangely enough, not for food, but as part of a ritual. Recent archaeological evidence at Gough's Cave has pointed to a sophisticated culture of cannibals who butchered their friends and ate them, according to Dr. Sylvia Bello. But the really amazing thing about these strange cannibals is that they were involved in some of the earliest funerary practices of our species. And this is where the Cannibal Skull Cup artifacts come into play. These are some of the most disturbing artifacts ever found in a cave anywhere. Of course, there were many prehistoric human remains found inside of Gough's Cave, almost all of them showing clear signs of bite and cut marks. The most remarkable thing they did was craft dishes from the bones of people they consumed. 3 skull artifacts were discovered that had been carefully molded into drinking cups and bowls. While this might sound horrific now, making containers like this has been found from the Vikings to the Scythians. Dr. Bello reported that there was also a pattern of zigzag marks carved into bones to make art. There was plenty of meat available, so it seems like this practice was a clear choice. But aside from the disturbing bone bowls and cups, archaeologists also found objects crafted from ivory, reindeer antlers, and the bones of small mammals. The cave's most famous resident was the Cheddar Man, a near-complete skeleton from around 10,000 years ago. The Lost Golden City. In a shocking discovery from April 2021, archaeologists uncovered Luxor's Lost Golden City in Egypt. It is now being called the most important discovery since Tutankhamun's tomb. That's saying a lot. This city dates back 3,000 years and had been buried underneath the sand until pretty much yesterday. According to Egyptologist Betsy Bryan from Johns Hopkins University, the long-lost city is going to provide archaeologists with an incredibly rare glimpse into the life of ancient Egyptians at the time of Amenhotep III. This was when the Egyptian empire was at its peak. It was wealthy with extensive trade networks and an unstoppable workforce building wonders and advancing in sciences. This ancient pharaonic city is the largest ever discovered in Egypt. Keep in mind that places like the Valley of the Kings, Saqqara, and other important archaeological sites were not necessarily large cities, but the Lost Golden City was a true metropolis with suburbs, fortifications, and commerce. So far, archaeologists have discovered pieces of jewelry, shards of pottery vessels, scarab amulets, and much more. Another huge reason why this discovery is so important is that foreign expeditions have been searching for this city for hundreds of years and never found it until now. Considering this amazing archaeological site was literally uncovered a few days before making this video, we don't have tons of information about it right now, but you can be sure that you will be hearing more about this place in the near future. Nefertiti Bust. Around 1345 BC, an ancient Egyptian sculptor named Thutmose created a bust of Nefertiti, the wife of 18th dynasty pharaoh Akhenaten. Famous for her beauty, she was one of history's most iconic women. The bust was discovered in 1912 by German Egyptologist Ludwig Borchardt during an excavation of the studio of Thutmose. Although there are no inscriptions on the artifact identifying it as Nefertiti, experts believe it's her, due to the trademark blue crown she's been seen wearing in other depictions. The bust measures 19 inches tall and weighs 44 pounds. But what makes this particular discovery creepy is that the image of the queen, though beautiful, displays one empty eye socket, making the otherwise lovely image rather unsettling. Thutmose apparently inserted quartz into the pupils of Nefertiti's eyes, but one of the stones is missing. Because other images of the queen do not show any eye defects, experts believe that the quartz simply fell out and that it doesn't represent a real-life condition or injury. A CT scan performed on the bust in 2007 revealed that it was made from limestone covered in layers of stucco of varying thickness. The sculpted inner face was slightly different from the final product. The cheekbones were less prominent, there was less depth in the corners of Nefertiti's eyelids, and there was a slight bump on the ridge of her nose. Soon after its discovery, the bust became a symbol of pride in Berlin, where its caretakers were reluctant to cave in to Egypt's demands to turn the artifact over. The campaign to repatriate the Nefertiti bust began as soon as it went on public display in 1924. It is currently exhibited today in a museum in Berlin. Bronze Age Metropolis. A giant metropolis from the Bronze Age that was once home to 6,000 people has been unearthed in Israel. The metropolis is complete with a huge temple, a mysterious cemetery, and even bones that may have been used during animal sacrifices. This huge city was once the biggest in the region during its time, taking up about 161 acres, a huge plot of land for 5,000 years ago. Archaeologists are calling it the Bronze Age New York because of how big it is. From what archaeologists have gathered so far from excavations, the city utilized urban planning with separate neighborhoods, designated public spaces, and advanced street planning. It was a cosmopolitan filled with thousands of people, though of course, today it's hard to imagine only 6,000 people making up a huge city. But remember that back then, there weren't that many people around to begin with. This site is known as En Esur, and it may have even been the home for people from various different cultures and kingdoms. People from all across the Middle East may have moved here in search of riches and a better life, sort of the same reasons people have today for moving to a big city. While the archaeologists were excavating the lost ancient city, they found the ruins of an even older settlement from 7,000 years ago. Though significantly older than the city that rose up in its place, it may have been the original settlement, making it a place that people have lived for thousands of years, and it must have been quite special. Squatting skeleton. In May of last year, archaeologists were performing a routine excavation prior to wind turbine construction in the German state of Brandenburg. Here they were surprised to discover a strange squatting skeleton belonging to a woman who died over 4,000 years ago. The pit was found near an ancient settlement area. She was found lying on her right side with her head pointing eastward, according to Dr. Christoph Krauskopf of the Brandenburg Authorities for Heritage Management and Archaeological State Museum. This type of grave is known as a contracted burial in the archaeological world. This crouching or squatting position is one of the oldest forms of positioning a body and typical of burials in Neolithic Europe. However, Krauskopf says that the burial is quite strange because the pit is much larger than what was needed for the woman's remains, and there are no grave goods that might help indicate her status or cause of death. However, someone had taken the time to border the area with field stones. Experts estimated that the burial dates back to sometime between 2500 and 2200 BC during the final phase of the Neolithic period. The bones and teeth will undergo radiocarbon dating, genetic testing, and isotope analysis, which will hopefully reveal the skeleton's age and the environment she lived in. And now for number 8, but first want to give a big shout out to Espada number 25 and Laura Omwengo for supporting Origins Explained. Thanks so much to all of you for supporting this channel, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We'd love to have you! Mexican tomb artifacts. At the Monte Alban archaeological site in southern Mexico, researchers found more than 400 valuable artifacts hidden inside of a secret tomb. This was back in 1932 when the famous archaeologist Alfonso Caso stumbled upon what would come to be known as the treasure of Monte Alban, inside Tomb 7 of the Zapotec site. The amazing artifacts contained within the tomb include relics made of jaguar bones, rock crystal, gold, and even ultra-rare jade. According to the Tomb 7 exhibition curator Nelly Robles, the artifacts were part of an ossuary and not a tomb designed for a certain person. Plus, both Zapotec and the later Mixtec people had use of the tomb, with Mixtec people leaving behind jewels and human remains after the Zapotecs. Both cultures believe that the Mesoamerican god of death and the underworld, Mictlantecutli, and the god of rebirth, Xipetotec, presided over the tomb and kept the treasures safe. The Sanqingdui ruins. Chinese archaeologists have made some incredible discoveries in 2021 at the legendary Sanqingdui ruins site, adding even more mystery to one of the most misunderstood and underreported archaeological sites in the world. Workers discovered 6 new sacrificial pits and pulled out more than 500 items dating back 3,000 years. The sacrificial pits were likely used by the ancient Shu civilization to offer living souls to earth and heaven. They may also have sacrificed people as a way to pray for peace and prosperity, says Tang Fei, the head of the excavation team. The team is made up of international professionals using modern technology and announced at a conference that they are focused on combining all kinds of techniques to learn as much as they can while protecting the relics. These newest discoveries, along with others that have been made at the Sanqingdui ruin site, shows the uniqueness of the Shu civilization and the diversity that can be found in China. One of the most amazing relics pulled out of the sacrificial pits was a gold mask unlike anything seen before. There were also jade tools, jade figurines, giant bronze masks, bird-shaped ornaments, painted bronze head portraits, and carvings made from teeth. Multiple missing persons' bodies. By now, you've most likely heard all about the disappearance and murder of Gabi Petito. She was a 22-year-old blogger from Long Island who vanished in September while traveling the country in a van with her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie. By the time her body was found, Laundrie had also gone missing, sparking a widespread manhunt across the country. This search turned up the remains of at least 5 other missing people, including 33-year-old Josue Calderon, 46-year-old Robert Lowry, 55-year-old Sarah Bayard, and 2 others who have yet to be identified at the time the news was revealed. Soon after that, the murdered bodies of newlywed couple Kylan Schult and Crystal Turner, who had crossed paths with Petito and Laundrie, were found in Utah. Schult had worked at a food co-op where Laundrie was seen slapping Gabi, leading some to suspect that the cases were linked. Authorities later proved that there was no connection, but the coincidence is eerie just the same. What's more disturbing about the discoveries is that the fact that all of these people may still be considered missing, if not for the intensive search for Laundrie. It makes you stop and wonder just how many bodies are out there, waiting to be found so that their loved ones can get some type of closure. Gigantia Temples. The Gigantia Temples are some of the most fascinating megaliths anywhere in Europe. Located in Malta, some of the pieces of stone used to build the temples are over 15 feet long and weigh over 50 tons. The legend goes that thousands of years ago, Malta was home to a race of giants who constructed the prehistoric temples. In reality, the ancient structures came from a very intelligent group of people. They developed extremely sophisticated technology that allowed them to construct the temples between the years 3600 and 3200 BC. The temples came before both Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid of Giza, and so the earliest temple here is considered one of the oldest freestanding monuments anywhere on the planet. Despite how old these fascinating temples are, they are still in great condition. Yes, they're in ruins, but experts have still been able to figure out what the temples would have looked like back when they were built. As for what the temples were used for, it likely had something to do with communal rituals. Hundreds of people gathered in front of the temple complex where ceremonial activities were carried out inside, often involving the slaughter of animals, chanting, and perhaps even music from ancient instruments. It's believed that the people here worshipped a giantess who in the local folklore was responsible for building the temples after having children with an ordinary man. The rituals were to bring fertility as the people believed the giantess would help them have many healthy children. Skeleton Lake. Located at Rupkund Lake deep within the Himalayas, a site dubbed Skeleton Lake has perplexed experts since its discovery in 1942 by a British guide. Here, at 16,499 feet above sea level, lie hundreds of human skeletons. At first, people thought it was the remains of soldiers who had died crossing the Himalayas during the war, but they seemed like they had been there much longer than that. It looked more like the people here had died due to some catastrophic event, perhaps an epidemic or a storm. But what really happened has been a long-standing mystery. An international team of researchers published a recent study which analyzed the bone's DNA. It was tough work, seeing as the site is often visited by pilgrims and hikers who move the skeletons and remove artifacts. There are also rock slides and other natural events that have damaged things over the years. Local legend says that a king and queen along with their court were making a pilgrimage to the shrine of a mountain goddess. But they were acting disrespectfully, getting drunk and celebrating a bit too much, so they were struck down by the goddess. To solve the mystery, the scientists sequenced the genomes of 38 of the skeletons and were surprised to learn that while 23 were of South Asian ancestry and 1 was of Southeast Asian ancestry, 14 were from the Eastern Mediterranean. These people were not all one group that had died all at the same time, but were actually several groups of people over many years. The Asian remains trace back to around 800 BC and the others to 1800 BC. This finding directly challenges the long-held theory that everyone at Rupkund Lake died in a single catastrophic event. Rupkund Lake attracted visitors from far-flung places, but they were unable to determine what brought people there or how they died. One thing is clear: the site's history is far more complex than scientists originally imagined, and they are hoping they can continue to find answers to the mysterious site. The Cursed Amethyst. The Cursed Amethyst, also sometimes known as the Blasted Amethyst, is currently locked up very far from human eyes alongside other precious stones such as the rare Martian meteorite and the Medusa Emerald, one of the largest uncut emeralds ever found. The Cursed Amethyst gets its name from its reputation. The gem was originally stolen during the Indian Mutiny of 1857 from the Temple of Indra in India, and ever since it has been allegedly causing its owners despair and horror. The stone is currently sitting inside the vault of the Natural History Museum in London. It was locked away by its previous owner inside of a bank safe, where it stayed for over 3 years following his death before ultimately being transferred to the museum. But the story of the amethyst goes back much further. It first arrived in England thanks to a cavalryman named Colonel W. Ferris, the guy who stole it from the temple in 1857. After arriving back in England, the colonel apparently suffered great misfortune. Then, so did his son, who inherited the amethyst. And then, so did the friend that the colonel's son gave the stone to. Basically, this amethyst is a hot potato of death. To this day, nobody is entirely sure where the jewel came from in the first place. Nobody in the scientific community believes that the curse is real, and it's unlikely that anyone will ever take it out of its hiding place inside the museum vault. Even if you don't believe in curses, the coincidences surrounding those who own the jewel and the misfortune that befell them is hard to ignore. And now for number 7. But first, want to give a big shout out to Janet Smith and Christopher Trafnick. You guys rock! If you are new here, welcome, and be sure to subscribe before you leave. Acrotii. The ruined city of Acrotii is located on the Greek island of Santorini, a popular vacation spot for international tourists. The island is famous for its whitewashed villages and blue roofs and sunsets. But to the south of the island, you will find the remains of Acrotii, a mysterious city that archaeologists and historians know very little about. What we do know is that the city was home to the ancient culture of the Minoans, sometime starting just after 4000 BC. The city likely began as a small fishing village, but grew to be a prosperous port city because of its position on the trade route between mainland Europe and the Middle East. Acrotii was likely a democratic society with its own parliament. The people lived in large 2-story or 3-story houses. They had hot and cold water and some of the first indoor toilets in the world. The city was also decorated with elaborate frescoes. The Minoans made their own wine, they crafted their own sculptures, and they built their own furniture. This is all very amazing considering it was going on during the Bronze Age, when people over in Britain were still living in huts and erecting stone circles. Some people even claim that Acrotii may have been the inspiration for the legendary city of Atlantis. Between 1620 and 1530 BC, everything changed. The volcano Thera erupted and literally blew the center out of Santorini. This was one of the largest eruptions ever recorded, and it created a caldera, or a huge pit 4 miles long. It also triggered a 300-foot tsunami that crashed into Egypt. By the time the volcano finished erupting, Acrotii was buried beneath 200 feet of ash. A black hole on Google Earth. Many people today have made it a hobby to search Google Earth and Google Maps in search of strange landmarks. Earlier this year, one eagle-eyed Reddit user found what looked like a black hole in the middle of the ocean. Commenters speculated that the site is censored for some reason. Perhaps it's a top-secret military base or some other government facility. This is a credible theory. In 2017, journalists reported that Google often blurs out sensitive sites like prison yards and military bases. One thing almost everyone agreed on is that the black mark is not a natural formation. But one person said that they thought it could be an underwater volcano. Many people found the idea laughable, with some even joking that maybe the strange formation was the island from the TV show Lost. Another Redditor joked that it was a portal to a hollow Earth, playing on the popular conspiracy theory that the inside of the planet is empty or contains a substantial amount of space. One Redditor finally put the mystery to rest, revealing that the so-called black hole is actually very dark green, and that it is in fact an actual landmass known as Vostok Island. Situated northeast of New Zealand, the island belongs to the Pacific island nation of Kiribati. It gets its seemingly pitch-dark hue from the thick jungle foliage that covers the land. So in reality, the site isn't censored or secretive in nature, it's just dense with vegetation. Shimao. The lost city of Shimao was discovered just recently, when archaeologists took a closer look at some ancient stone walls at the edge of the Mu'us Desert in northern Shanxi. For decades, the locals simply thought the ruins were part of the Great Wall of China. But once excavations got underway, archaeologists realized they were dealing with something significantly older than the Great Wall. It turned out to be a forgotten city that dates back to the year 2300 BC. Over the past decade, archaeologists have been hard at work uncovering the secrets of this ancient place. So far, researchers working with the Shanxi Provincial Institute of Archaeology have found fortifications, advanced infrastructure, thousands of artifacts, and even a massive pyramid that once stood 230 feet high. This pyramid was probably the residence of the ruling leaders and their families. The position of Shimao has been a little curious for archaeologists because they had always thought that the Chinese civilization first developed 500 years after Shimao was founded. They also thought Chinese civilization came from the Central Plains, not to the north near the border of Mongolia. And to make matters even more confusing, there is absolutely no written record anywhere in history of this city existing. Nobody knew about it, even though it was clearly a powerful kingdom with advanced knowledge and unique architecture. It was probably the most advanced urban city anywhere in China at the time, and yet there is no mention of it anywhere. Even after all the excavations, scientists can't figure out why or how the ancient city remained a mystery for so long. A medieval female criminal. In 2017, archaeologists working in southern Bulgaria discovered a late medieval grave containing a woman who was buried face down with her hands tied behind her back. Found in an necropolis on the Nebet Tepe hill in the modern-day city of Plovdiv, the odd burial could have belonged to a bandit or some other sort of criminal, whose strange position was likely a punishment for an alleged wrongdoing she committed while she was alive. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to restore that funeral's history completely because there are also pits from the Ottoman period there, explained excavation leader and archaeologist Sofia Hristeva, who added that it was the first time she had found someone buried in such a manner. The site itself dates back to the 13th and/or 14th centuries during the Second Bulgarian Empire. Also in 2017, archaeologists discovered an equally strange skeleton with an arrow through its chest at the nearby site of Antiquity Odeon, which the ancient Greeks and Romans once used for theatrical performances before it was repurposed as a medieval cemetery. Dating back to the 11th or 12th century, the grave left experts with numerous unanswered questions, including whether the arrow killed the deceased individual or if it was left there as a gift for a warrior. Lead chalice. Archaeologists have recently found the fragments of a lead cup or a chalice lightly carved with symbols that date back to early Christianity. This is an extremely mysterious artifact, which is found at the site of Vindolanda, an old Roman military fort near Hadrian's Wall in the north of England. 14 fragments in total were found underneath the remains of a Christian church from the 6th century, and according to Dr. David Petz from the Department of Archaeology at Durham University, it is an extremely exciting discovery that comes from one of the most poorly understood periods in all of British history. This singular artifact has created a direct connection between the earliest Christian churches in Britain and the religion's development during the medieval period. The curious marks on the cup are etched on both the inside and the outside, but they are difficult to see without the aid of specialized photographic equipment. It took a lot of work to properly reveal the symbols, which ended up being depictions of ships, crosses, angels, Latin and Greek letters, and what even appeared to be members of a congregation. While Vindolanda has had its share of unique firsts, the fact that this chalice survived the post-Roman landscape is significant. Mysterious Roman Villa. In rural England, near the small town of Corby, archaeologists recently discovered a new and mystifying site. A team of experts from Oxford Archaeology East excavated around the site where ancient Roman villas were discovered between 2011 and 2016 during construction. It turned out that there was an entire valley full of Roman villas, with painted walls and pottery fragments dating the structures back to the 1st century AD. The newest excavation was in 2020, and it revealed a Romano-Celtic temple or mausoleum built out of stone. The ancient ceremonial structure had at some point been repurposed as a housing complex, but before it was used to house anyone, it was something known to the Roman Britons as a monumentum, a type of funerary construction. These types of temple mausoleums weren't used as communal gathering spots for religious ceremonies. Instead, they were used by the elites as expressions of success. The huge monuments were made to memorialize the rich Roman Britons who were able to afford building them. This particular structure, found by the Oxford Archaeology East, was built near a henge monument from the Bronze Age, which itself was excavated in 2012. Right now, it's not clear what kind of link there was between the Roman elite who built their monuments in ancient Britain and the prehistoric stone megaliths found throughout the country. Building a house near one could have been like owning beachfront property. And now for number 6, but first want to give a big shout out to Edward Parkhurst and HockeyFan0819. Thanks for joining us in our little corner of the internet. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family. Hidden hotel room. While staying at a motel with her grandmother, a TikToker named Addison Castle became curious about the strange-looking floor beneath her bed. The two decided to take a closer look. They got down on the floor and pulled an area rug away, revealing a cutout in the floor. Beneath the carpet was a board, which the pair also had to pull out of its place, revealing a secret room beneath the one they were staying in. The motel is only one story, which means that the hidden space is in the building's basement. It contained no electrical wires or plumbing fixtures, ruling out the possibility that it was used for those purposes. Castle shared footage of the eerie discovery on social media, mentioning that she couldn't see the end of the room, which freaked her out. The chilling find is just the latest of many hidden rooms, crawl spaces, and even an entire apartment that TikTokers have shared with their followers over the last few years. In early 2021, a woman named Samantha Hartsoe discovered an entire hidden apartment behind the bathroom mirror of her New York City home. She became suspicious after feeling a strange draft coming from behind the mirror, so she pulled it out of the wall, revealing the secret space. Samantha squeezed through the tiny hole leading to the room and found an old toilet, some garbage, and a discarded water bottle. While the discovery is admittedly rather uneventful, to find an entire apartment you didn't know about hidden behind the one you live in is unsettling, to say the least. Mysterious Temple. A recent drought in Iraq has revealed an amazing palace built 3,400 years ago by a mysterious empire. It happened when the water in the Mosul Dam reservoir began to recede. Archaeologists from Germany were quick to arrive in Iraq and try to excavate as much as they could before the waters rose again and covered the ancient palace. These archaeologists believe the palace was built by the Mitanni Empire, one of the most enigmatic empires of ancient times. Only a handful of ruins are still around today, with the capital still being a total mystery. Nobody knows much about the Mitanni, which is why archaeologists were so desperate to get as much as they could from the submerged palace before it was too late. They found clay tablets, walls that were once painted in bright colors, and evidence that the palace was probably part of a huge city. After all, it's doubtful this mighty empire built a palace in the middle of nowhere. It was almost certainly part of a larger site. Archaeologists are currently working to decipher the mysterious clay tablets they found to gain more information. All we know about these people so far is that they ruled northern Mesopotamia from between 1500 to 1360 BC, a very brief period considering. They rose and fell pretty much in the blink of an eye. The researchers would love to know where they came from and what happened to make them vanish so quickly. And now for number 6. But first, want to give a big shout out to Oliver F. Rupert and Caroljo420 for supporting this channel. Thanks for coming over to our little corner of the internet. And if you want to learn more about amazing discoveries, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Baby buried in a jar. Late last year, archaeologists in Jaffa, Israel, discovered the skeleton of a human baby inside a 3,800-year-old jar. Archaeologists from the Israel Antiquities Authority unearthed the poorly preserved remains from a shallow pit roughly 10 feet below sea level while performing routine excavations of a 4,000-year-old city ahead of a construction project. Jar burials are fairly common, dating as far back as 4,500 BC and up to the 20th century. Different civilizations customized the practice according to their beliefs. Despite the practice's long history, scholars are unsure what its purpose was. It was once customary only to bury adults in jars, but at some point people began burying babies and children in them. IAA archaeologist Yoav Arbel speculated that perhaps ancient people were compelled to protect their dead from the environment, or the jar was meant to be symbolic, representing the return to the womb. Perhaps both. Scientists are hoping that excavations at this site and others will help us understand more about the rituals and context of these jar burials. Ancient Maya alien artifacts. Last year, rumors spread of strange objects allegedly taken from Maya excavation sites. There were figurines and carvings of Maya warriors sacrificing victims, along with other figures who look very much like aliens. A publication in October 2020 reported that the figurines were found when a rock wall of a cave was demolished with a bulldozer. Then, artifacts appeared with figures wearing pre-Columbian motifs, domed heads, and dark oval eyes. They are strangely similar to extraterrestrial representations found in movies. There is not only one alien artifact that has been uncovered from the ancient kingdom of the Maya. There are many, from statues depicting alien beings to strange carvings of what appear to be spaceships and star maps. Though the truth of where the artifacts come from, or how the Maya could have developed the idea on their own, is a total mystery. Since these findings spread like wildfire, Adrián Montemayor, head of information for the National Fund for the Promotion of Tourism, the government institution that supervises the work, joked about the alleged finding in a thread on Twitter on October 11th. We have not found figures of aliens in the archaeological excavations of the hashtag Tren Maya, unfortunately. He said, I have to clarify that these are contemporary pieces that have no relationship whatsoever with the Mayan periods. They include Mexican symbols from Peru and the United Kingdom. They are made of current materials and have aliens that look like children's figurines. Nevertheless, social media and the Hispanic world is going crazy, with many believing that the government is just trying to hide them from the public. Ancient Amazon paintings. There is an amazing archaeological site in the Amazon jungle where tens of thousands of paintings from the Ice Age were recently discovered. These bizarre paintings cover an area of about 8 miles and are drawn all across one long cliff face. What's truly fascinating is that the paintings on the cliff wall appear to show a variety of extinct megafauna, from a giant sloth to what experts say could be a prehistoric mastodon. Recent evidence has shown that the paintings were drawn by people sometime between 12,600 and 11,800 years ago. These would have been the earliest human beings to settle the Amazon after having started their journey crossing the Bering Strait around 4,000 years earlier. They made the paintings using a red natural pigment called ochre. The area of the paintings is called Serranía La Lindosa, and it's now being hailed as one of the largest rock art sites on the planet. Even more amazing is that at the time the ancient people were making these paintings, the Amazon jungle would have been in the middle of a serious transformation, becoming the hot and diverse jungle that we know today. These old unknown humans would have been hunting herbivores the size of cars, animals that have been extinct now for thousands of years. Fungus that lures flies to their death. A recent study found that a relatively common fungus lures flies into having deadly intercourse with one another. The fungus, Entomophthora muscae, attracts healthy male flies to dead, infected females. The male mates with the corpse, becomes infected, and spreads the deadly spores to more flies. Gross. Dying at the mercy of E. muscae is slow and torturous. When a spore lands on a fly, it grows shoots that punch through the insect's exoskeleton and spread the fungus throughout its body, according to researchers from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. The growth eventually begins to pour from between the fly's armored segments. Once it reaches the brain, the fungus compels its host to go to a high place, somewhere ideal for spreading the spores that are pouring from its body. After that, the fly's job is done, and it dies. The recent study put healthy male flies near dead females who were both infected and uninfected. Researchers found that males were 5 times more likely to try mating with infected female flies. Research team member Andreas Hansen described the fungus as a deadly aphrodisiac of sorts. The team also determined that flies were far more attracted to flypaper traps that were covered in fungal spores. The study showed that certain chemicals are responsible for the boost in sexual behavior, and the findings could prove useful for developing pest control products. But in order to do that, scientists will need to figure out exactly which chemicals are attracting the flies. What do you think about this scary fungus with deadly spores? Let me know in the comments below. Ancient Smokehouse. An ancient site dating back to 5,000 years ago has been discovered in Siberia. It is a strange place, covered with ancient pits in the ground that turned out to be a Neolithic smokehouse. This archaeological site was used by the local people to collectively cook all of their meat. Fish and other animals were processed here inside of these huge pits. Researchers from the Russian Academy of Sciences say they used a method that is still being used in the region today by Siberian ethnic groups and people living in the extreme north. Aside from just fish, the bones of dogs, foxes, and wolverines were found inside the pits. This has created a bit of a problem for researchers because wolverines are not native to the area around the pits, instead found hundreds of miles away in the Russian taiga. Nobody has any idea how these people got a hold of wild wolverines, and now researchers think that this smoke site was used for ritual purposes. But according to the lead archaeologist, it's a huge mystery which we have yet to understand. Skeleton. During the summer of 2015, scientists at the Penn Museum in Philadelphia rediscovered a 6,500-year-old human skeleton that had sat in a coffin-like box in a storage room for 85 years. There was no documentation of its identity, leaving the skeleton's origins and life story a mystery. Further examination and a project focused on digitizing records from a past archaeological excavation helped to shed some light on the skeleton in storage. As it turns out, the bones belonged to a muscular male who stood between 5.7 and 5.8 feet tall. He died at age 50 or older and was buried at the site of in what is now southern Iraq. Ubaid period skeletons dating back between 5,500 BC and 4,000 BC are extremely rare. A team led by Sir Leonard Woolley unearthed the remains between 1929 and 1930 while excavating a Mesopotamian royal cemetery at the site. This particular skeleton predates the other remains by roughly 2,000 years. During ancient times, was a small island surrounded by a marsh, according to Woolley's findings. At some point, a great flood supposedly gushed in without notice. Based on where they were buried, it's believed that the skeleton lived around this time. Shortly after news broke of the rediscovery, experts expressed their hopes to learn more about the individual and the society they lived in, including their diet and ancestral origins, by analyzing the skeleton using modern techniques. Artifact of the Great Pyramid. When researchers went in to survey the Great Pyramid of Giza, British engineer Wayneman Dixon took 3 artifacts from the Queen's Chamber: a piece of cedar, a ball, and a hook, which are now known as the Dixon artifacts. However, one of the artifacts went missing. Over 70 years later, it was discovered in a rather unusual place. A researcher was going through some objects at the University of Aberdeen Museum in Scotland when she found a small tin box that looked out of place. Inside was a wooden fragment about 5 inches long. It was the long-lost piece of cedar. It was placed in the Queen's Chamber when the structure was built and was probably part of a tool used to build the pyramid. Apparently, the fragment and a bronze hook believed to have been used during the construction were donated to the University of Aberdeen sometime in the early 1900s, but the fragment of wood disappeared. Someone had accidentally put it into a cigar box and then shoved it in with other miscellaneous artifacts in the university's Asia collection. The only reason it was discovered is thanks to the Egyptian flag on the cover. Following its discovery, modern carbon dating tests were done to the wood fragment. The results showed that the wood dated back as far as 3,341 BC, which was many years before the construction of the pyramid. This has led researchers to speculate that whatever the wood had been a part of, it was left behind by the earliest builders at the famous site, though even today, nobody knows what kind of tool or instrument the wood fragment came from. Mysterious French megaliths. Archaeologists working with the French National Institute for Preventive Archaeological Research uncovered an impressive megalithic site in 2018 near the municipality of Massagny. Researchers are still investigating the people who once lived in the area and constructed the stone megaliths. From what they've managed to learn so far, the obscure culture known as the Courtaloid emerged in France around 4300 BC and lived in the area around Lake Geneva for at least 800 years, maybe even 1,000 years. Along with the stone megaliths, researchers found evidence of a Neolithic village. The megalithic complex would have been huge in its prime, made from around 15 giant standing columns and surrounded by towers around 1 meter high. But what's truly interesting about this site is that the megalithic complex was altered at a later date for unknown reasons. The standing stones were flipped onto their sides and then buried under the dirt. Regardless of why, this actually helped protect the stones, and when they were uncovered, researchers found that these toppled stone towers had curious markings etched into their sides that archaeologists have not been able to decipher. They almost appear to have been made haphazardly, though researchers are positive they had something to do with the sudden deconstruction of the stone complex. On the largest stone, there are 20 marks carved out making the shape of a large U. There are indentations and intertwined chevrons. Other geometric shapes are on the smaller stone slabs. The team is using special technology to bring out details that might not be visible to the naked eye. The question is, what were these builders trying to tell us? Gerbil tooth headdress. In modern-day Kenya, there is a 5,000-year-old gravesite called the Lothagam North Pillar. Situated in a sprawling field, it consists of burial mounds and pillars that took anywhere from 450 to 900 years to build. At the center of the 15,000 square foot site, there is a stone platform measuring 100 feet in diameter. It contains a burial chamber that may have once held the remains of up to 580 people. This site doesn't seem to be dedicated to royals or elites, though. It's actually filled with the graves of ordinary tribe members of all ages and genders, who were indiscriminately laid to rest side by side. Nobody received preferential treatment, and most of the bodies were adorned with colorful jewelry. Yet one discovery stood out among the rest: a headdress made with over 400 gerbil teeth that came from 100 different gerbils. Because the species was not yet domesticated, the person who made the headdress went through the painstaking process of trapping the animals. Just imagine the amount of time and effort that went into creating this creepy but fascinating decorative item. Catching each gerbil, removing their teeth, and then making the actual headdress. Ancient Amazonia. In the Amazon, archaeologists have found no less than 81 new archaeological sites. This discovery has confirmed that roughly 1 million people lived in a small region of the Amazon basin way before Europeans ever arrived. This is shocking because up until now, archaeologists believed the human populations of the Amazon were spread out in small areas. And believe it or not, it's thanks to the destructive deforestation in Bolivia and Brazil that the giant geometric shapes of what were once settlements were identified. Researchers used satellite images to find the ruins left behind in the soil. These aren't physical ruins, but geoglyphs, scars in the earth from where settlements once stood. 104 earthworks and over 81 settlements were found, and when the archaeologists finally went to the Amazon to check these places out for themselves, they found all kinds of treasures, from stone axes to ceramics, and even ancient garbage dumps. The settlements vary in size and shape, from tiny villages to huge fortified cities with roads and plazas. The experts have no idea which culture dominated the region. They only know that the people had a major impact on the land, building and farming, and then basically vanishing. The truth here is that the Amazon is not quite as unexplored as we think. Back during the time of the Aztecs and the Maya, there was a whole world operating in the Amazonian jungle. The trouble is that when they were gone, the jungle took over the land again. The thing is, we just don't know what happened to them, where they went, or why they seemingly disappeared right before the Europeans showed up. Bizarre burials. Swiss anthropologist Amélie Altarage was perplexed when someone found a middle-aged man buried face down at a 400-year-old cemetery in Bern. He was laid to rest with an iron knife and a purse full of coins dating back between 1630 and 1650 AD in the crook of his arm. Altarage wrote in a research paper that she suspected the man was buried face down to prevent him from returning from the grave. She worked with a team of researchers to analyze nearly 100 face-down burials that took place over a 900-year period throughout Switzerland. Most dated back to tumultuous times when plagues ravaged the region and the burials revealed signs of mutilation or weighing bodies down with stones. Experts believe that these methods were designed to thwart vampires and the undead by preventing them from escaping their graves. As the plague swept across Europe starting in 1347 AD, burial practices shifted noticeably, demonstrating a widespread belief that the dead could return to haunt the living. The deadly disease killed people by the millions, and it claimed lives faster than communities could keep up with. Consequently, people dealt with the unpleasant reality of decaying corpses, which bloat and shift, making disturbing sounds that may make them seem like zombies or some other type of creature that may return to life. The belief that people were cursed from beyond the grave spread as individuals became ill and died within days of a relative's funeral. But not all researchers believe that face-down burials stemmed from a fear of the undead. Speaking with National Geographic, archaeologist Peter Parvanov explained that people may have been laid to rest in this position in a desperate attempt to prevent disease spread, or to represent sin, based on the belief that God was punishing a community for their wrongdoings through disease. Strange Paleolithic bird figurine. A rather peculiar artifact was recently pulled out of a garbage heap. Archaeologists found a Paleolithic bird figure that may just be the oldest three-dimensional Chinese artwork on the planet. Archaeologists are even saying that the existence of this tiny bird shows that the people of China began to make their own artwork independently from other civilizations of the ancient world, somewhere around 13,500 years ago. The bird was first found in the Henan province of China when a pile of trash was being excavated. The trash actually came from a well that was dug by construction crews in 1958. The pile of dirt sat there until 2005, when archaeologists decided it would be a good idea to comb through what the construction crews had left behind. And that was when they found the small Paleolithic bird figurine, carved expertly out of a blackened bone. There were other artifacts in the pile as well, things like pottery shards and stone tools. However, the bird has definitely gotten everyone's attention. It actually pushes the origin of avian art in Chinese history back 8,500 years. According to Luc Doyon from the University of Montreal, archaeologists were struck by the technological feat of the bird and its beauty. Some anthropologists also noted that when a race of people move beyond the basic needs of survival, they begin to create art. This bird could signify the exact time that human beings in China became comfortable enough to stop foraging for food and began making three-dimensional art. It's very interesting to see at which point different cultures in different parts of the world began making sculptures. The Burnt City of Iran. The Burnt City of Iran is located near Zabul and is one of the largest Bronze Age settlements found anywhere throughout Iran or the Middle East. Some believe that the Burnt City of Iran, known locally as Shar-e-Sokhta, was the capital of an ancient civilization that prospered on the shores of the Helmand River back around 3000 BC. The city spans about 200 hectares and has been linked to the ancient and legendary city of Arata, written of in Mesopotamian and Sumerian texts. Arata was said to be a difficult-to-reach place that was incredibly rich in gold and other precious metals, with a massive temple built entirely from lapis lazuli to honor the great goddess Inanna. In reality, archaeologists have discovered that this ancient city was a trading hub for merchants from Mesopotamia, Central Asia, and the Indus Valley. It was one of the first complex societies in Iran, and apparently burnt down at least 3 times before the final fire in 1800 BC caused everyone to abandon the place. And even though experts have combed through the broken ruins of this once prosperous city, nobody can explain why it burned down and was rebuilt time and time again. There have been many mysterious graves found here, over 1,200 of them. Some incredible remains have been dug up, including a woman who died around 2900 BC and was buried with a bronze mirror and an artificial eyeball. Strange ancient graves. In 2016, archaeologists discovered one of Europe's oldest grave sites, dating back roughly 8,500 years to the Mesolithic period, near the German village of Groß-Fredenwald. The grave site contained 9 human skeletons, with 5 of them belonging to children younger than 6 years old, including a 6-month-old infant. At the time, Europe was home to numerous hunter-gatherer tribes. They were always on the move, according to forensic anthropologist Bettina Junklaus. So it's actually quite rare to uncover multiple Mesolithic graves in one place. Yet this cemetery was used for over 1,000 years, until around 7,000 years ago. Oddly, the burials are situated in a place where the soil was rocky and hard, making it difficult to dig graves. There were also no nearby water sources, making it a less than ideal location for a settlement. Lead excavation archaeologist Thomas Terberger took these factors as signs that the burials were carefully planned out, making this site a true anomaly among other European graves from the time period. Its strangest feature is the grave of a man who was buried upright with bone tools and flint knives. Even more strangely, he was only buried up to his knees, while the rest of his body was left to decompose until the rest of the grave was filled in. The man's skeleton shows no signs of him having performed hard labor during his lifetime, indicating that he was likely a skilled craftsman of some sort. He lived at a time when Europe's first farmers were settling in the region, so his remains may offer new insight into this transitional period, as well as the encounters between hunter-gatherers and those with a more agrarian lifestyle. Still, the biggest question of all is why the man was buried standing up. Experts are hoping that a DNA analysis will tell them if he migrated to the area from Russia, where similar graves have been found. Siberian Cave. In another exciting find from Siberia, researchers have found a young girl's pinky finger in a cave. It was an intriguing find because researchers weren't sure if the girl was living in the cave, if she was passing through, or just what exactly was going on. Analysis showed that she was part of the Denisovans, a group of prehistoric people from over 50,000 years ago, but the specifics were a bit murky. Recently, state-of-the-art technology allowed the researchers to go back and do a DNA analysis on the pinky finger and a few molars found near it in the same cave. They found that the girl died 50,000 years ago and that whoever the teeth belonged to, a pair of individuals, had died 110,000 and 170,000 years ago. This is astonishing because it proves that within this mysterious Siberian cave, people lived collectively for at least 120,000 years, beginning nearly 200,000 years before today. To put that in perspective, humans have only been building cities for around 11,000 years. We were living in caves for around 20 times longer. But the discovery doesn't stop with evidence of the Denisovans. Archaeologists also found the toe bone and molar from a Neanderthal, as well as proof that humans even occupied the cave in more recent times. Sixheaded Chief. In the 14th century, a warrior in his 40s died and was buried in Scotland's Easter Ross region in what is now the fishing village of Port Mahomet. He was laid to rest in a ceremonial fashion with an array of other human remains surrounding his head. Someone discovered the burial in 1997, and the deceased man was soon nicknamed the Six-Headed Clan Chief due to the confusing mix of human bones that were found with him. Originally, scientists believed that the medieval grave contained the remains of a single man surrounded by 5 skulls. Last year, DNA analysis results revealed that the burial was occupied by 2 men and surrounded by 4 skulls. Still creepy and mysterious. Why did they do this? The men were either cousins or a nephew and uncle and were buried between the late 13th and early 15th centuries. 3 of the 4 skulls belonged to relatives of the second man. The 4th skull dated back between the 8th and 10th centuries and was originally buried in a nearby monastic cemetery, leading researchers to believe that it belonged to a Pictish monk. They think that the skull was a prized family heirloom. But at that time, the practice of placing disembodied skulls into a grave with a body was practically unheard of in Scotland, according to the site's lead archaeologist Cecily Spall, who spoke with Life Science. You can find examples in the Neolithic and the Bronze Age where body parts were used for worship, but this is something completely different, she explained. In the medieval period, harvesting the graves of your parents and grandparents for body parts and putting them into a contemporary burial is about as unusual as it gets. Evidence shows that the grave's original occupant died from extreme violence, most likely a fatal blow to the face. He was a man of high importance, perhaps a local leader, based on the location of his burial in the middle of a parish. The second man's relatives likely put him there to emphasize their connections with the first man, perhaps during a time of turmoil when it would prove beneficial in legitimizing their community leadership. Sacrificial Altar. The colossal jaguar sculpture currently sitting at the National Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City was once used as a vessel for hearts that were torn straight out of the chests of sacrificial victims. This intimidating artifact is known as a Kwahikali, and it was originally carved from a large piece of volcanic rock. It's one of the most striking artifacts ever found, in the likeness of a growling jaguar with its fangs bared and its nostrils wide open. The animal looks as if it's about to pounce on an unsuspecting victim. A Kwahikali is a type of altar that would have been found at almost every Aztec shrine hundreds of years ago, and these were either in the form of a jaguar or an eagle. In the center of it is a bowl that was used as a vessel in which the high priest would place the heart of the sacrificed victim before burning it as an offering to the Aztec gods. In many Mesoamerican civilizations, the heart was believed to be the physical soul of a human or animal, and so the ritual was a way that the gods could be nourished with the soul of a life form. And considering that the jaguar was an animal with great symbolic importance within the Aztecs' cosmovision, it makes sense that many of these altars were crafted in their likeness. This particular jaguar sculpture was found sometime in the 19th century, and it's believed that it was used primarily in sacrifices involving enemy warriors caught in battle. The mysterious cave of Karus. These mysterious caves are located in the Kashmir region of India. These caves are said to be so vast that they travel underground all the way to Russia. There is even a massive stone structure called Satbaran, with 7 doors carved into it that are known locally as Saf Bar, with some saying the doors represent 7 different routes that can bring a person to one of 7 different places on Earth. And there are other caves nearby too, such as the copper mine cave named Tramkhan. In 2018, a pair of American explorers set out to reach the ends of the mysterious Karus caves. They managed to explore 3 of them and reach their termination points, though they did say that the caves could have been connected to other subterranean passages in the past. One of the caves was apparently sealed by the Indian Army. The rest of the caves haven't really been explored. Could they have led to different places as far away as Russia or China in the past, before the modern age? Well, nobody really knows for sure, but it's definitely possible. The truly strange thing is that nobody even knows who or what built the 7 stone gateways known as the Satbaran. They stick out of the ground on the side of a grassy hill like a sacred monument lost to time. Nobody knows how long they've been there. Soviet-era bunker. The Cold War era was defined by mounting tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union as they tried to outcompete one another when it came to everything from nuclear weapons to developments in space. During that time, people feared that these tensions could erupt into war at any moment. So it was common for people to build fallout shelters beneath homes, businesses, and public buildings. As a result, many of these hidden spaces are still being discovered today. But it's rare to find a fallout shelter frozen in time, untouched since its abandonment. In 2017, an urban explorer going by the YouTube name Shai discovered a small concrete structure while wandering through an old factory in Russia. Video footage he captured shows him going through a dark corridor and then opening 2 giant metal doors to reveal a room chock full of old relics, with working ventilation and electricity. The items include gas masks, newspaper clippings, photos, tools, boots, medicine, clothing, and boxes full of equipment dating all the way back to World War II. There are coats still hanging on hooks, papers tacked to the wall, and what appears to be a designated sleeping area covered in clothing and survival equipment. The YouTuber didn't disclose the bunker's location, probably because he wasn't supposed to be there. So the details of the site remain shrouded in mystery, leaving viewers to draw their own conclusions about where the bunker might be and why it still looks like it was abandoned yesterday. Neolithic settlements. NASA has discovered a weird archaeological mystery thanks to satellite pictures they took high in the sky above Kazakhstan. The pictures of a very remote steppe devoid of human habitation reveal geometric figures, huge rings, and mysterious lines several times larger than a football field. These huge earthworks are only discernible from the air, and the oldest among them has been estimated at 8,000 years old. One of these earthworks is a massive Neolithic settlement comprised of 101 raised mounds. It covers more terrain than the area around the Great Pyramid of Cheops. What's really fascinating is that according to the New York Times, these earthworks are entirely unstudied. There are trenches, ramparts, and the remains of ancient settlements, and nobody has investigated them. Compton J. Tucker, a biospheric scientist with NASA, recently said that he has never seen anything like this before. The entire region seems to have been hugely important thousands of years ago, yet the country of Kazakhstan has been horribly slow to send people to investigate. Some of the lines in the earth may have been used as ground observatories for tracking the movement of the sun. But who built them? Historical records show the lands here were probably inhabited by tribes during the Stone Age who used them as hunting grounds. They may have been part of the very mysterious Manzar culture, who lived in the region from between 7000 BC and 5000 BC. What's confusing scientists is the fact that a nomadic population of hunters stayed in one place for long enough to build such weird structures and to make such impressive geoglyphs. Some of the ramparts are at least 10 feet high and 40 feet across, like primitive castle walls. They would have had no reason to build these, though, as there wouldn't have been wars fought by big armies. The purpose of this place is still a total mystery. Casket on the shore. While walking along the shore at Bridge of Dawn near Aberdeen, Scotland in early 2019, a family spotted an eroding casket containing a woman's skeletal remains. Authorities summoned experts to the scene, where they determined that the woman was deliberately buried at the site, but not recently, probably sometime between the 17th and early 19th centuries. Aberdeenshire Council archaeologist Bruce Mann explained that the team originally thought the individual was a shipwreck victim, but they were surprised to learn that she was female. There is definitely a story there, but we may never know why she was buried here, he said. The team found no settlements and no other graves near the burial site. As far as they know, the burial is isolated. Once the investigation is finished, the woman will be reburied at a cemetery in Aberdeen. Bronze Age artifacts. The world's most unlikely archaeologist has made one of the most amazing discoveries in recent memory. The archaeologist's name is Monty, and he is a dog. While out for a walk in a small Czech village, Monty began digging in a field and miraculously came upon a buried cache of amazing Bronze Age artifacts. The dog helped find 13 sickles, 3 axes, 2 spear points, and a large number of bracelets. All of these artifacts are at least 3,000 years old, and according to Smithsonian Magazine, the owner of the dog actually got a small reward of about $360 for turning the artifacts over to the authorities. Considering that so many of the artifacts were found in a single place, the site was most likely used as some sort of sacrifice pit 3 millennia ago. But what surprised archaeologists the most was the incredible shape in which the artifacts were found, because normally, the ancient cultures that lived in the area would only bury fragments or even melted fragments of weapons, but all of these artifacts were in perfect condition, making their value even greater. As for where these artifacts came from, archaeologists say they are from the Urnfield period of the late European Bronze Age. The Urnfield period was the time when communities began to cremate their dead and bury them in ceremonial urns. Skara Brae. Skara Brae has been described as the Scottish Pompeii. It was first discovered in 1850 when Scotland was hit hard by a fatal storm. By the time the storm subsided, at least 200 citizens had died, but the storm had brought more than death. It had also revealed something strange and ancient from the earth on the coast of Orkney Island. The high tides and strong winds had ripped apart the land to reveal the ruins of small houses close to the Bay of Scale. But even though a piece of history had clearly been unveiled, nobody really excavated the site and it sat there abandoned. It wasn't until 1925 that efforts were made to protect the relics by building a seawall, and that was when even more structures were discovered. Since then, there have been archaeological expeditions to Orkney to try and decipher the mystery of these ruins. Researchers believe Skara Brae was settled as early as 3180 BC and remained a popular town for at least 600 years. This means it was an active town in the Neolithic age. Even more impressive than its age has been the sheer number of artifacts discovered throughout the incredibly well-preserved settlement. This is why it's nicknamed the Scottish Pompeii, because it is the best preserved human settlement anywhere in Northern Europe. The artifacts went untouched for thousands of years, and archaeologists were able to discover stone balls, shovels, beads, knives, and even the remains of a drainage system that led to the ocean, and may have been used as one of the very first actual toilets ever made by human hands. The mystery here is that nobody knows what happened to the people who once lived in Skara Brae. They vanished after occupying the region for 600 years, and nobody knows why. Possible fugitive hideout. Let's face it, any cabin in the woods is creepy by default. But internet users took things to a whole new level recently when they discovered a shack in Florida's Big Slough Preserve, where they believe that Brian Laundrie may have hidden after being named a person of interest in the homicide of his girlfriend, Gabby Petito. Self-declared activist Andra Griffin shared footage of the cabin's interior, which shows pieces of wood and a partially collapsed ceiling scattered across the floor and on a bench. Some internet sleuths assumed that law enforcement probably never even bothered searching the cabin, while others speculated that it might serve as a hiding spot for killers in the future. The dilapidated structure is certainly off-putting, but whether or not Laundrie hid there will likely remain unknown. His partial remains were found around the same time the video appeared, leaving many unanswered questions surrounding Gabby's disappearance and death. Laundrie's cause of death has yet to be announced, and his role in the tragedy is also a mystery. Mystery Islands. The islands of Nihoa and Mokumanamana are part of the Greater Hawaiian Island chain. They are two of the most mysterious islands in the region, as archaeologists have found curious remains on both of them. They've discovered terraces, man-made platforms, and upright stones that look as though they were once part of a larger monolithic structure. They were dubbed the Mystery Islands by the first European sailors to come across them because they found the ruins and had no idea what they meant. And even today, archaeologists have little clue as to the people who lived here or the structures that they built. The first archaeological surveys were done in 1923. They noted cave shelters, the ruins of habitations, agricultural areas, and stone tools on both islands. They also found jars and bowls and strange stone carvings of faces that almost look extraterrestrial. Additional excavations were done in 2012 with help from the University of Hawaii. These researchers identified a complex ritual system that existed on the islands from between 1400 and 1800, so up until just under 300 years ago. The indigenous Hawaiians likely traveled to these islands to perform ritual ceremonies during seasonal changes, such as the summer solstice. The rulers of the time would perform elaborate ceremonies in which they believed they were inheriting the mana of their dead ancestors. Mana is considered spiritual energy, which when absorbed from dead ancestors would help to make the rulers wiser and to ensure prosperity during the coming harvest. Strange Viking duo. In late 2019, archaeologists dug up two Viking corpses buried with their longboats, one on top of the other, in central Norway. The pair died nearly a year apart, with the first burial, a man, dating back to the 8th century, and the second burial, a woman, dating back to the 9th century. This was likely done on purpose, according to scientists who believe that Vikings probably exhumed the man and his 33-foot-long longboat and placed the woman and her smaller longboat inside. I had heard about several boat graves being buried in one burial mound, but never about a boat that had been buried in another boat, said lead archaeologist Raymond Salvage. He learned, following the discovery, that several similar graves were found during the 1950s in southern Norway, but he said this is essentially an unknown phenomenon. Grave goods show that the 9th century woman who was buried in a 26-foot-long ship was an important person. She wore a pearl necklace and fine clothes and was laid to rest next to a cow's head. The most perplexing item in her grave was a cross-shaped brooch made in Ireland, leading researchers to believe that she was involved in Viking raids. Most of both boats' wood and human remains had rotted away, but scientists hope to learn more about the woman by analyzing her skull fragments and hopefully extracting DNA. Sunken Aboriginal tools. 270 Aboriginal artifacts have just been found at two different archaeological sites underwater, both of them located off the northwest coast of Australia. These amazing artifacts are about 7,000 years old. They are stone tools which were used by the original people who lived in Australia before Europeans ever landed on the continent. But to understand the incredible significance of this discovery, we first need to take a look back in history. You see, when the Ice Age ended 12,000 years ago, and the glaciers melted and the sea levels rose, at least 30% of the habitable land in Australia was submerged. And as you can imagine, a lot of people were living on that 30% of land. After all, this was coastal land, and there's almost always a community near the coast. It's unclear if the coastal people were decimated by catastrophic flooding, but one thing is for sure, they left behind artifacts and remnants of their culture. Jonathan Benjamin, a professional archaeologist from Flinders University, recently told Business Insider that these artifacts have redrawn the map of what archaeology can do in Australia. No longer are archaeologists restricted to only digging on land or in the shallow water. And even as we speak, Jonathan's team is working hard to dive under the surface of the ocean and find more artifacts, and to decode and understand the Aboriginal tools that have already been retrieved. Soon, we will have a much clearer idea of the people who once inhabited the land down under. Spanish Stonehenge. A recent drought revealed what is being called the Spanish Stonehenge after it was lost at the bottom of a reservoir for over half a century. The Spanish Stonehenge is known properly as the Dolmen of Guadalperal, and it was revealed when a brutal drought caused the waters of a local reservoir to recede. The ancient monument was then captured in images by NASA satellites. But just what does this site have in common with Stonehenge? The Dolmen of Guadalperal was built of 150 granite stones arranged in a circle, with an entranceway guarded by a massive standing stone carved with images of snakes. It's kind of like Stonehenge, only smaller. It's also a dolmen, which means the standing stones were once used to support a massive capstone, which would have created a large structure, probably used as an ancient burial tomb. As far as experts know, this place was used either as a tomb, a trading post, or a site of great religious significance. The archaeological site was first discovered by a German archaeologist named Hugo Obermeier in 1926. Hugo also found artifacts likely left behind by the builders. But then, in 1963, the government flooded the area to create the reservoir, and the stones were submerged. Until now, there's still almost nothing known about the Dolmen of Guadalperal, including who built it, why they built it, or when. Secret room behind the kitchen cupboard. One of the first things many people do when they move into a new house or apartment is explore. After all, you don't always get a chance to take an in-depth look when you go to view a property. While taking a peek around their new rental home recently, an unnamed couple found a room hidden behind the back of their kitchen cupboard. There is no normal door leading to the space, and the room has no flooring, yet it has a window and is filled with building materials. The confused couple documented their discovery on social media, hoping that maybe someone had some insight into why the room might be there, or perhaps why it was concealed. Some suggested that it was the perfect place for a serial killer to hide bodies. Others were less concerned with what the space was used for, and were annoyed because the room was a waste of good natural light. While nobody could quite figure out the room's purpose, they had plenty of recommendations for putting the room to good use. One mom wrote that she'd turn it into a hideout for her kids, while another piped in that she'd use it as her own personal hideout for when her husband stresses her out. Upon taking a closer look at the room, the couple received one more unexpected surprise when they found vintage bottles of wine, some of which were more than 50 years old. Cheers! Mount Nebo. Mount Nebo is one of the most mysterious places in all of Jordan. It is considered to be the mountain where Moses witnessed the Promised Land before he died. Of course, the Promised Land in the Old Testament is Israel, which one can see from the top of the mountain. The Old Testament also says that Mount Nebo is where Moses lived out his final days, and where his body was ultimately buried. However, despite decades of archaeological searching, his remains have never been found, and so the story has never been scientifically proven. This site was already an important place of pilgrimage by the 4th century AD. A church and the sanctuary were built at the top to honor Moses. Then monks built a new Byzantine monastery in the 6th century. The mountain was ultimately abandoned in the 16th century, and the churches were left to become ruins. It wasn't until 1993 when the mountain was purchased by the Franciscans, who restored the site to its previous glory and opened it up to tourists. Thanks for watching! Would you dare to travel to any of these mysterious locations? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon. Bye!